I complain a lot about accessibility in my videos, and that sounds like it's very pretentious of me. Like, I don't think people should be allowed to beat games easily. They should struggle. That's not what I'm talking about, and I hope to clarify that with this video. When I say games shouldn't be accessible, I mean they shouldn't be holding your hand on how to play them. I don't mean they shouldn't have colorblind settings or subtitles. More specifically, I don't want the game to eliminate the experimenting that comes from the opening hours of a game when you're trying to figure out how to play it. I don't like tutorials or yellow paint or having glowing objective markers on the screen, and even more recently I'm seeing in a lot of modern AAA games where characters will, as you move through an environment, they'll look at something like a switch and they'll go, "Oh, a switch! I should press that." Or they'll see like a generator and they'll go, "A generator! I wonder what that controls. I should probably destroy it."
Hey, shoot out the damn coupler!
You're not even given an opportunity to explore and figure out how to solve these puzzles, so they're not even puzzles. You don't even have the chance to figure out how the game is meant to be played. The developers are too eager to show you themselves. They have no confidence in you in piecing together the puzzle yourself. And the only way that I can show, because it's one thing to tell you that accessibility is a problem. I can sit here all day until I'm blue in the face and say, "No accessibility, get rid of it, get rid of tutorials." That doesn't accomplish anything. So what I want to do is show you that accessibility is not needed, not just to play a game, but to enjoy a game, which is ultimately more important, because I don't care if I beat a game, I care if I have fun. And I want to show you that you don't need accessibility to have fun with a game by playing an obscure untranslated JRPG called Soukaigi. This was published by Square on the PS1. And I picked this game because of a few reasons. Number one, it's not well known. There's no fan translation, so even if I wanted to play it, I would need to forsake accessibility anyway. There's no way to play this in English. Number two, the entire game is in Japanese. Something that I'm seeing in a lot of modern Japanese games is they use some English in the menus, but with Soukaigi, even the numbers are in Japanese, and there are no subtitles for the cutscenes. So even if I wanted to whip out my phone and look through the screen with some sort of translation app, it wouldn't help because there's no subtitles to translate. So this should make the experience even more difficult. And the last reason is, the only reason I even know about this game is because of the soundtrack. I love this soundtrack, and I've used the songs in several of my videos. That's not really relevant for the purpose of this video, but I wanted to mention it because I really enjoy talking about music, if you couldn't already tell. And right before we begin, I want to just say the only rule that I had for this playthrough was to not look up any help whatsoever. Nothing, no game facts guide, no YouTube video, not even an instruction manual, which if I were to play this game in Japanese with a physical disc, it would come with an instruction manual. I'm not even using that. I don't want any help. I'm not using my phone or computer or any device to cheat. No translation app. This is completely cold, completely blind, figure out everything as I go, because for me, that's how I can have fun with a game. So I do have experience playing PlayStation 1 games, so I know that usually with JRPGs, there's a cutscene that plays before you reach the main menu. Vagrant Story has an important prologue that it shows that you would miss if you didn't let it sit on the menu for a few seconds. With Soukaigi, it's more like a trailer. It shows you the playable characters and some of the cutscenes throughout the game, but it's not really essential for understanding it. Not that it would help anyway, because I don't understand Japanese. So right here, right at the start menu of the game, I need to guess what these options are. So even though I don't know Japanese, which is true, I still know that these are kanji. Even if I had a basic understanding of the other Japanese alphabets, katakana and hiragana, those are the easier to learn alphabets, I would still be walled by the title screen of this game. So my approach to this first obstacle is, I need to decipher what the pictures could possibly mean. These kanji, what is this picture? So the middle option has a symbol that kinda looks like a Japanese torii gate. So I figured pass through the gate, meaning start the game. And that wound up being the case. I don't know if that's what it actually means, but that's how you start a brand new game. And by the way, in Japan, with Japanese games, circle is enter and X is close, and I already had experience from playing a couple of Squaresoft games from this era. They function the same way. But I think starting with the later PlayStation 1 games and in the PS2 onward, they changed how the controls are oriented for PlayStation games. where circle is cancel in the West. I don't know why they changed it. To me, it makes more sense for circle to be accept, like thumbs up, like yes, correct, and X is no, wrong. I don't know why we changed it. The first scene of the game shows that it's December of 1998, so it's a modern setting. Usually if you show a year, there should be a purpose. So if it's 1998, there should be technology that existed during that year. Planes, cars, cell phones. Basically, it's not a high fantasy setting. No dragons, or riding a horse to get around between cities. If it's December, I'm expecting something related to Christmas, otherwise why specify the month? But the game doesn't do much with the season. I'd like to have seen some snowy levels or winter theming. The game doesn't have any of that. We do get a Christmas scene once we're 5 or so hours deep, but that's about it, and even that Christmas scene, to me, it feels completely out of context. Also in Japan in the wintertime, it's cold as hell, more so in January and February, but it's still cold in December. I don't know why these characters are wearing t-shirts. I think the game could have done a better job selling me on why this has to be December 1998. As far as I'm concerned, it could have been June 1993 and it wouldn't have made much of a difference. When you give dates in storytelling, unless there's a specific reason, like in Back to the Future, 1955, 30 years in the past, and then 2015 in the sequel, those years are specific, they matter. If the year doesn't matter, you really don't even need to tell me about the year. It just feels like fluff. So the impetus for this story is there's a cult that splits Mount Fuji in half. I don't really know why, and I never will because I couldn't understand a single cutscene. But somehow this triggers some sort of doomsday event where pillars sprout across Japan and the ocean floods in to fill the surrounding craters, so it's kind of like the apocalypse. Most of the people are dying because of this event. Does the cult do this to summon a god? Is it to ascend to a higher plane of existence? Is there some sort of religious or spiritual reason here? There could be, I honestly don't know. Like for me, this is just your typical group of bad guys that want to destroy the world. So then we need to establish the hero of this story, which is a teenager, and he reaches into a portal and pulls out a stone containing the 10 Commandments. Is it actually the 10 Commandments? I have no idea, but for all I know, it could be. I never really found out the point of this scene, and it doesn't matter because this is a JRPG, so 9 times out of 10 it's going to be about a chosen one saving the world. Spoiler, that's what it is. In Japan, seems like you stand the best chance of being the chosen one if you're a teenager and you carry a giant fuck-off sword. We'll find out later that this is a magic sword that can transform and fire an earth-splitting laser when it absorbs the power of Mount Fuji. That's not for a few hours. And that's pretty much all you're going to get out of me in terms of story. As you can expect, I don't know any of it. So let's get to the gameplay. Here's the first struggle. I can see a portrait in the top right. That's Vic Romano. I don't know what his name is yet, so I'm going with Vic, one of the hosts of Most Extreme Elimination Challenge. This guy. There are 5 columns here, I don't know what they are, so I shoo them away. Then I reach this screen with 7 columns. Remember, I can't understand a single thing, no clue what any of this says. I see meters, I can move some blue orb above them, so my mind immediately went, oh, this is a stage select. So I choose the first option and I jumped into a stage. So I'm like, okay, I guessed right. No, that is not what caused me to start the first stage, and this is not a stage select. This is the stat distribution screen, and I'll have more on that later. Jump into stage 1 here, and right off the hop, no tutorial, straight to the action. There might be an option in the menu somewhere to see what the controls are. I didn't check, and I never found out. And I don't need to. You see, I've played enough games to figure out what I need to do without any help, even if I can't understand the language. Okay, so here's what we do. First order of business. Button check. It's simple. So, what are the buttons? We have a jump button, and if we mash attack, we can create a combo, and we also have a dash button. The movement controls, there's a learning curve here. I don't know how I keep finding these games with terrible controls. I seem to be a magnet for this kind of thing. I guess the upside is that these terrible controls don't bother me as much as they really should anymore, just because I've been so exposed to it. Seeing as how this is an action RPG on a console not known for action RPGs, and before they exploded in popularity and we had this sort of standardized way of creating the controls, the developers didn't understand the power of the analog stick. So don't ever take controls for granted. Forward on the D-pad is forward, left and right, rotate your character, back is block. You can't strafe, you can't walk backwards. You instead need to press R1 to rotate 180 degrees to the right, and L1 does the same for the left. R2 and L2 look up and down. There's no double jump, but on certain characters, if you press jump again at the apex of your jump, it flips you around in midair. Because of this, it's more comfortable to play with the D-pad instead of the stick for movement. And seeing as how I'm one of 5 people on the planet that has beaten Kingsfield, I got used to these controls pretty quick. These are easier to get used to than that game. There's more to the controls than that, and also the combat, but these basics will do for now. All we need to know right now is how to move around and attack. So what kind of game is Soukaigi? What is the point of this game? What are we doing in these stages? You see this bar on the right hand side. Your objective is to destroy enough crystals and enemies to fill this bar from red to yellow to blue. Once you hit blue, you unlock the boss of the stage. So you fight the boss, you watch a 5-minute cutscene, and then you're sent to the level select screen to repeat this process. There's about 10 stages to complete the game, and it takes a little bit less than 10 hours to finish it. You're meant to revisit these stages to nab crystals that you missed the first time around, so usually on the first time through a stage, you're going to be able to destroy all the red crystals. These are low to the ground, they're pretty easy to break. Yellows are a little bit more challenging to reach, sometimes they're outside of the boundaries of the stage. I didn't even know how to destroy a couple of them. Blues are the most difficult to reach. You usually need the highest level jump, and you might need to look around the environment to do some light platforming. But why would you want to revisit a stage to break the crystals that you missed? The crystals are a form of experience. If you collect enough, you get a reusable stat point. Once you reach disc 3, that's the point of no return. So any stat points that you've acquired before that point, that's all you get. So there might be a little bit of challenge there. If you go into disc 3 with skipping a lot of the crystals, you might think you might be a little bit underleveled. Not really. You don't need to revisit these stages. This is just an optional thing. I revisited some of them to get the crystals. I didn't 100% the game. There's not really an incentive to because the game really isn't that challenging. There's not much to this first stage. You can see me flub around with the platforming for a bit. Eventually I reached the end, and before you fight the boss, you can distribute your stat points. This happens for I think pretty much every stage. You're given this screen where you can reallocate your stat points and you can change which character you're controlling. I dumped the stat points wherever because I had no clue what these stats were. I didn't even really know if these were stats or what I was doing. I was just fill up these bars. Okay, I can't fill them up anymore. Done. Then I fought the boss. And he floats around. He occasionally tosses a fireball. He's not challenging at all. So rewatching my performance here is embarrassing. I died because, of course, I'm a scrub. But it worked out because once you die, you reach this screen. And once I hit this screen, I was like, uh-oh, Russian roulette. One of these is quit the game, I'm sure of it. Another one has to be continue. The third one, no clue. So I just totally guessed here. I got lucky. I chose the middle option, which restarts the boss. It puts you at the checkpoint right before the boss. Once he's down, you get a lengthy cutscene, which is completely voiced, by the way. Every single cutscene in this game has complete voice acting. People gave me crap for complaining that Kingsfield 4 had no voice acting. They were telling me, oh, it's an experimental game, or most games didn't have voice acting back then, giving excuses. Here's a game 3 years Kingsfield 4 senior, and it has complete voice acting, dynamic camera work during cutscenes. There's no excuse. There's so much voice acting in this game, so many cutscenes, that even though it's only 10 hours long, it takes up 3 discs. With stage 1 finished, we're back at the stage select screen, and now I've got to figure out how to save this thing. How can I record my progress and quit? Long story short, after some trial and error, I found out that the right option lets you choose a stage, the middle option enters the currently selected one, and the left option is save. So you choose a save slot. These lines at the top, I figured out that these are numbers. 1 line is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3. 4 is not 4 lines. That's where it gets complicated. So for now, I chose the first save slot. The option on the left is cancel, and the one on the right is accept. In my mind, I saw 3 letters on the left, so I figured, oh, that must mean yes. No, that's quit. So it booted me out, but no big deal. Didn't quit the game. It just took me back to the main screen over here. Went back in, saved it. Game's all saved. We're ready to move on to stage 2. Aside from the voice acting, you can see that this game was trying some pretty novel things that are common in modern games. Once you select stage 2, you get a recap of what happened in the last stage, last time on Soukaigi. I can't understand any of it, and the game's only 10 hours long, so I don't know who would want something like this, but I guess it's a cool feature. The next cutscene, we see that the main character is left-handed. Outside of Link, I can't think of any other left-handed sword fighters in video games. My first thought is, oh, someone on the design team is left-handed. Because Miyamoto, I don't think he's fully left-handed. I know he writes with his left, but I think he plays games with his right. But since Link was a lefty for the longest time, I assumed that that was Miyamoto thinking, we don't see many left-handed heroes, let me try something different. And that became a notable quirk of Link. Except Soukaigi never took off, so this left-handed situation is only amusing to some random dude making a YouTube video almost 30 years later. This character's meeting with some special agent chick from the UNSO, don't know what that stands for, United Nations something, and they've set up a base camp here, probably to investigate how someone cleaved Mount Fuji in two, so they can claim the power for themselves. It's common in media to have government agencies be either incompetent or evil. But I mean, if the police or what have you were competent, why would you then need teenagers to save the world? So she's sidelined for a few hours, spoiler, she's evil. Then you meet the next playable character, who is playable on this stage, but I completely missed it on the character select screen. Take a look. You see how there's a new portrait on the right hand side hidden by those letters? First of all, I didn't even notice this at first, I didn't know this was a character select screen. Second, if you press up or down on the D-pad, you can cycle through your characters. I missed it this time around, and then on the stat screen I just dumped all my points in the first stat. I was hoping that this was HP or strength, but whatever it was, the meter is close to full, so I knew that it should have an appreciable difference in the gameplay. The stage starts, still didn't know how to reach these yellow crystals yet since an invisible wall seems to block you. I think if you max out your ranged attack damage you can eventually break them. Then I jumped to hit this crystal, and my jump height is completely absurd, so that's what the first stat affects. I also figured out that these blue pentagons at the top of the screen, you can trap enemies in a shield, and right now I can only use 2 shields at once. And that's the strategy for this stage. Trap an enemy, combo it, move on. The same strategy I'll use for most normal enemies throughout the game. I almost die on this stage, but I found out that if you stand on a blue circle, you regain all of your health. There are other colored circles like black and yellow. I didn't know what they did. I later found out that the black one heals poison, but it's not until the end of the game when I finally realized that depending on the character you're playing, these circles have different effects. Blue doesn't heal the fire guy that wields a stick. Red heals him. And towards the end of this level, you slide down a mountain. Each level tries to do something unique to stand out. Towards the end of the game, it tries to incorporate precise platforming. We'll have to get to that when we get to that. For now, this is pretty simple since it's only stage 2. Even without a tutorial, a lot of games try to ease players in instead of sending you straight into the deep end. They give you a stomping ground where you're pretty safe. If a game takes a while to get the ball rolling and it's heavy on tutorials, for example Final Fantasy XIII, there's like 15 hours of tutorials before the game finally takes the training wheels off. If a game does that, it feels redundant. I'm in a relatively safe environment, which means I can safely experiment. But I'm never given a chance to experiment because the tutorials take away that mystery, that reward of figuring something out for yourself. You want to have tutorials, just make it an optional selection on the title screen. PlayStation 1 games used to do this. Older games, back when we still played physical games, you had the manual. If you didn't want to read the manual, you play the game, you would be lost. And that's fine, you can be lost and still understand the game without having a manual. And when you replay a game, these easy introductory levels can be blitzed through because you understand how the game is meant to be played. If you had tutorials there, it would just be a wasteful bogging down of the experience. If I understood Japanese, by the time I finished stage 2, I'd already know 95% of everything there is to know, without a single tutorial, without reading the manual. Because I don't understand Japanese, it took me like an extra 20 minutes. And I'll cover that in the next section. Now you meet the love interest of the game. I don't really know what happens, but I do know that these characters kind of pick on her and then she gets upset and she blurts out something number one.
こう見えてもより紙撃退率ナンバーワンなんですから。
Even though the plot is most likely by the numbers, there is character development here, so that's definitely something that I missed out on with this playthrough. There is reason to play a game for character development. I will concede that. You can enjoy a story not for the plot, but for the characters, for the journey. The plot of Final Fantasy VIII is completely ludicrous, but the cast of characters makes the journey entertaining. So right before the boss, you can change characters. You can see that I finally figured that out. And I reallocated my stats into the second category since I won't need to jump during a boss fight. Surely this second stat would be strength, right? It's not immediately obvious what this second stat affects, but later on I figured out that it ties into the magic system. Since I didn't know how to cast magic yet, it didn't help me out here at all. So I died, but no big deal, just try again. With 2 stages down and some new characters to mess around with, I figured this was the perfect opportunity to really get to know this game. How do you play and enjoy Soukaigi? The first order of business. What are these stats? I need to know. I can't keep guessing here. So, through trial and error, I dumped everything into one stat and jumped into a stage to see what was affected. I already figured out that the first is jump. Second is the number of talismans that you start a stage with, and these let you cast magic. You need to use a certain amount of talismans to cast a certain spell. The third stat, this is the shield gauge. You can cast shields on enemies to freeze them in place and they stack, and this is the amount that you can have active at any given moment. The fourth stat, to be honest, no clue. Maybe magic defense. The fifth stat, I think this is physical defense. It's hard to say. It shares some kanji with the fourth option, so they might be related. I think these are just different types of defenses. Sixth is ranged attack damage and ranged attack distance. You see that it shares kanji with the seventh option, and the seventh option is melee attack damage. So once that was down, I was set for the rest of the game. I knew just stack everything in attack and jump. The rest, if I have extra, dump it in there. I didn't find out until the end of the game how valuable magic is. I'll cover that later on. Then I started messing with the controls some more. I knew that holding triangle made me jump higher, but what about the other buttons? Can I hold the other buttons down and get different effects? Are there charged attacks? Holding X is a special attack. It uses those green materia things that I've been collecting, or whatever they are, magic stones. I didn't know, so I stockpiled a ton of these because these magic stones carry over from stage to stage. The length that you hold down X, the attack button, affects the type of special attack that you get. There's like different stages of attack, and depending on the stage that you choose, that drains a different amount of the materia resource. If you hold circle, it creates a barrier around your character. Then if you tap X after charging and creating that circle, you open up the magic selection screen and you can choose to cycle through these spells by tapping circle afterwards. You need to tap circle a certain amount of times to cast that spell. So here's how you cast magic in this game. Hold circle, tap X, cycle through your spells with circle in rapid succession, stop once you select the one you want, and then it'll cast the spell. So what are these spells? No idea. I have no clue what most of these spells are. I think the second one cures poison. I cover that later. And if you use the highest tier spell, the tier 8 spell, it fully heals your character. And I didn't figure that out until the tail end of the game. If you hold square, it doesn't seem to do anything. Tapping square is a dash, and you can cancel out of a dash by tapping square after you initiate it. But some characters, they can't dash, which is a problem, as we'll cover later on. Then I checked out what made each character unique. So Vic Romano here is the baseline jack of all trades. The chick can quickly chain dashes, but she has very low HP, her strength is extremely weak, and her weapon range is very short. You need to be like pressed right up against an enemy to hit him. If you level up her ranged attack, she's a little bit better, but still not great. I think she's meant to be a magic focused character, but I didn't really like using her. I like being up close and using melee. The buff guy is in the opposite direction. He's slow, but he's strong. So once I had a handle on how to play the game, I was ready to jump into the next stage. Stage 3 takes place on a tiny island off the mainland. Either that or they're in a giant crater filled with water. So the party takes a boat to get there. Their vessel of choice is powered by a 25-volt Honda engine, rare English sighting. That's not really common in this game. I don't know why voltage is shown instead of horsepower, but I'm not a boat guy. Maybe this is typical, or maybe at least in Japan it's typical. The main character is lying down and groaning, so he's probably seasick, and his new girlfriend sounds concerned. That's pretty much all I could piece together from this scene. I wound up watching every single cutscene in this game. I didn't skip any of them. I don't know why. I guess I was hoping maybe if I exposed myself to this language for long enough, maybe it'll eventually start to make sense. That never happened. So All I can make out are simple observations like, why does Crocodile Dundee zip tie his pants to his ankles? I'll never know. This level is a giant circle. You can choose which direction to take since the paths eventually converge. If you fall in the water, you respawn at the start of the stage and you lose some health. So unlike the first two stages, you need to pay attention to your platforming here. The jump is kind of slippery. The height is based on how long you hold down the button. If you dump points into jump, you jump so high that you can't see where you're landing. And much later in the game, this game demands precise platforming, so if you put too many points into jump, it can work against you. There are two bosses here, and the game is merciful enough to let you change characters before each one. I took advantage of this because health isn't refilled before a boss, so you can switch to a healthy character. I chose Kenny Blankenship over here because if the main character is Vic, then his sidekick has to be Ken.
Right you are, Ken!
Kenny has two stats that can't be increased. Here's why I think these are related to defense. During the fight, this boss hits like a Mack truck. One combo, dead. So either this boss hits much harder than anything else thus far, or Kenny's defenses are non-existent. That doesn't matter too much here since I just stun-locked him with the shields. The second boss is super cool. It's a giant bug that flies around the stage. I later found out that with Vic, you can attack out of a dash, even in the air, and later on in the game, it'll demand really tight air dash attacks to collect certain crystals. There's also a healing point here, so it's a pretty easy fight overall. After the boss, you leave the island before a giant dragon crashes into it and explodes. I'm sure this makes sense if I knew what the hell was going on, but it's still pretty amusing. From my perspective, this happens for no reason and the party is completely unfazed. This little girl joins you in stage 4, and I tried using her for all of 5 minutes before immediately getting pissed and switching back to Vic. Got a couple of major issues with her. For starters, she can't dash, and I've grown quite fond of dashing everywhere. She also can't trap enemies in a shield. Not too big of a deal with her because she's a ranged attacker, shouldn't need to freeze enemies up close anyway. But since there's no lock-on, you need to manually aim your shots. And enemies are always moving, so they're difficult to hit, especially in midair. Keep in mind, I'm also playing with tank controls. Seems like most characters come with some sort of caveat or restriction, like no defense, no magic, no shields, no ranged attacks, no melee attacks, no dash attack, no dash period, bad attack hitbox. Maybe if you want more of a challenge, you can switch between these characters and deal with these restrictions, but as far as I can tell, the main character is insanely overpowered. He comes with no restrictions, and his attack hitbox is enormous. Everyone else in comparison, terrible. Character choice aside, this is a pretty obnoxious stage. You've got 10 feet of sand covering this city, and it turns it into a desert. How do I know it's covering a city? You can see the tips of these electrical pylons buried in the sand. If that wasn't obvious enough, there's some cars buried here too. I like this type of environmental storytelling where you see something strange and then everything clicks, you get that aha moment and the level makes sense. So I looked into it, and from what I understand, there are sand dunes in Japan on the western coast, so maybe a shockwave from that Doomsday event blew the sand into a nearby city and consumed it. The only way to navigate this stage is to constantly, and I mean constantly, warp between gates. The warping isn't random, each gate has a fixed destination, but it's easy to get disoriented because A, there's no map, and B, your destination gate isn't obvious. Where you're facing is not the direction that you're going to warp. If you enter a wrong gate, it can erase a ton of progress and you have to start all over again. I like to think that I have a decent sense of direction, but I was stuck here for about an hour, which is twice as long as the prior stages. There are also invisible enemies here denoted by a shadow on the ground. These guys have a chance to poison you. If that happens, you either need to find a black circle on the ground to cure it, or cast a spell. I don't know if it goes away naturally. I don't think so. I think it'll eventually kill you. I got lucky and tried a random spell which just so happened to cure the poison. I got really lucky with playing this game, just doing random stuff and it worked out. The boss here is much easier than the stage. He's spawned by a panel that switches between colors. Red gives an attack buff, so just grab the attack buff and mash attack. Done. The second boss is even easier. Just poke her a few times and it's over. You get a super long cutscene here. I struggle to keep an interest in games where I can understand what's going on. Paradoxically, I can't understand anything here, yet I sat through this entire cutscene without dozing off. I was focused the whole time. It's not because, oh wow, I can see how this story can be great. No, that's not the case. I was just trying really hard to make sense of something. Anything.
くさびがこの先にあるっていうのは間違いねえんだな。
So once you get back to the stage select, you choose the next stage, and you're prompted to switch to Disc 2. It's been less than 4 hours, and we're already a little under halfway done with the game. Disc 2 starts off with another really long cutscene, and because I don't know anything that's going on, even though it lasts 5 minutes, it felt like half an hour. So we're introduced to some new characters. One is probably a priest, either that or a rice farmer, and the other is a ninja, or maybe a gypsy. The guy pervs out for a second and then chants the same prayer over and over, so I'm leaning towards priest. I did learn something about these new characters. You're gonna have to forgive me if I butcher the pronunciation. I think the little girl is named Azusa, and she speaks in third person. The guy that I've been calling Vic this whole time, Azusa calls her Nao-chan. So that's gotta be a nickname, but I already got used to calling him Vic, so to me, he's Vic. We're immediately thrust into a boss. He wanders around so you can do the same and break crystals. And once you finally confront him, as long as you're staying really close, he can't deal a whole lot of damage. This surprisingly works for a lot of bosses, which is why they tend to blast you away if you stay close for too long. If you revisit this stage after completing it, it'll be daytime instead of night. Doesn't affect the stage in any meaningful way, but I like the attention to detail. So I thought the stage was over after killing the boss, and I was like, oh no, the cutscene's longer than the stage, god damn it. Then you recruit the ninja chick and start the second half. This game doesn't feel designed around anyone other than the main character. What I mean by that is, the ninja doesn't have ranged attacks, she can't dash attack, and her melee attack distance is very short, just like the other girl character. I don't know, maybe her charged attack is worthwhile, maybe she has decent spells, but to me it feels like I'm handicapping myself every time I try a new character. It might be fun to go through the game again and really get to learn these characters, maybe as a challenge run, but for now, I just try to stick with the main guy whenever possible. The second boss of this stage is a repeat of the stage 1 boss. He's not any harder, maybe he has one new attack, but nothing can hit you if you're close enough. He just has more health than the first time, and since I know how to play the game at this point, I managed to beat him without taking damage. Look at that, I'm no-hitting bosses in a game I can't even understand. Just as a brief reminder, this game takes place during Christmas. It hasn't really felt that way up until this point, but then the love interest starts singing a Christmas song as battleships armed with laser cannons prepare to attack something.
It's a Merry Christmas.
The cutscene at the end of this chapter plays the Christmas song again as the ships accidentally blow themselves up. This is as festive as it gets for the entire game, and I find the contrast amusing even though it's hard to say if it's intentional comedy. This level is a vertical maze. You choose a path to fall down, and you can take different routes on your way down to the bottom. The walls are translucent so you can catch a glimpse of the paths that you skipped. That's pretty useful when you replay the stage to break the crystals. Once you're at the bottom, the government chick appears, this time with a gun, and she says technology
テクノロジー
and America.
アメリカ
So, put 2 and 2 together. She's super evil. I do like her cartoonishly evil laugh. She's got that part down pretty well. So instead of fighting her, you fight this horrible pain in the ass boss. Jesus Christ. I was stuck here for close to 50 minutes. The stage itself took probably 10. The boss itself isn't too bad. It fires energy balls that you can swap back at the boss, kind of like you've seen this in a Zelda game. It's pretty unreliable because if you whiff, you take huge damage. Even if you do hit the ball, it probably won't travel far enough to damage the boss. I found that it's best to just break the balls before they even get a chance to reach you. Outside of that, if you don't get too close, it can't really do anything else. So what's the problem here? The boss arena. You're fighting a boss that will not stop flying around. It's like a fucking mosquito, while trying to stay on this tiny toothpick of a platform. If you didn't put points into ranged attack, or you use that ninja chick that can't use any ranged attacks, good luck. I have no clue how you would beat this. Getting close to it is not an option. It's always flying away from you, hovering over a bottomless pit. Normally you can't accidentally walk off a ledge. The game has a mechanic in place that stops you from accidentally walking off, which is super slick. It doesn't, however, stop you from backstepping or sidestepping off. In the whole fight, I'm pivoting left and right to adjust my aim. Sometimes I'd get a sidestep and fling myself off straight to hell. If you attack at the apex of your jump, you do a forward downward plunge. And that accidentally got me a few times too. And every time you fall, you start at the beginning of the boss arena, and you take damage. There seems to be a couple different thresholds for the boss's health, and when it hits these thresholds, it tries to move deeper into the arena. After a couple hundred points of damage, it'll drift to the center of this bridge. Once it gets down to, 15-20%, it'll move towards the back of this nightmare zone. The game hasn't really demanded much in terms of precise platforming before this point, but man, this part where the floor collapses, I was really struggling here. I probably could have oriented the camera down so I could see where I'm landing a little better. In hindsight, I think the key is to dash and then cancel the dash while you're over solid ground, but I didn't try that here. If you fall, you need to come all the way back here and do it again, and take a look at where the boss is. Fighting this thing in melee once it reaches this point, it's not gonna happen. The one saving grace is that the boss AI is pretty bad. It tends to get stuck in a loop where it'll keep trying to hit you with an energy ball. If you stand at a sweet spot, you can mash and slowly chip away at it with ranged attacks. It's not that simple, of course, because once it reaches the nightmare zone, you're out of luck. You gotta learn how to platform, and I just couldn't get that down. After close to 45 minutes, I got extremely lucky. The boss pinned itself next to one of these falling platforms, and it just stood there, waiting to die. I won through cheese, so it wasn't exactly satisfying, but this game, platforming isn't its greatest strength. Who knows, maybe using a different character could have made this easier. Maybe the archer chick, she probably would have been alright. And I have to say, no two stages in this game are alike, which is very surprising. I know it's a short game, but there's not a whole lot of repetition here, which is very much appreciated. This level is broken into chunks. The first chunk puts you on a boat. All you need to do here is survive until you make it to the end. There's no boss. You don't even need to kill all these crystals to fill your gauge to blue. This goes on for about 6 minutes before your girlfriend has her neck sliced open by a flying fish and bleeds out. The second chunk can go one of two ways. Either you smash your head against a wall, trying in desperate vain to collect crystals in a room where lightning randomly strikes you, or you just make it to the platform on the other side to end the stage, which takes about 10 seconds. The slightest miscalculation sends you plummeting into the water, and as we established, nobody in this game learned how to swim. I also don't know how there's lightning striking inside of a cave, or why platforms randomly glow red, which increases gravity while you're standing on them. I just collected a few crystals and hightailed it out of here. In the last stage, the character supercharged his weapon with the power of Mount Fuji. I forgot to mention that. In this stage, he activates the sword, which causes it to split apart and it turns into a laser cannon. He destroys something, which pisses off the cult leader. I suppose that was the point of the game, to power up his Buster Sword, but that begs the question of how this kid got his hands on this sword and how he knew it could transform like this. I'm sure it's explained, it's just I'd have no way of knowing. Believe it or not, that's the end of Disc 2. There is no boss that ends the disc. It's super short. This was half the length of this disc was spent fighting that obnoxious Stage 6 boss. Disc 3 is essentially a boss rush. You can't revisit the prior stages. Final Fantasy VIII did something similar, like this is the point of no return. If you're here, you gotta end it. It's a little bit disappointing. There really should have been some sort of grandiose final dungeon. My favorite part of this game has been exploring the levels, figuring out where to go, how to reach the crystals. Combat's okay, but it's not its strong suit. Stage 8 is split into 3 parts. Part 1 is a rematch against the mid-boss of Stage 3. It's pretty much the same fight, deals a ton of damage. That is a lie. I had to pause the video right here to clarify during editing. This is not the same boss as the stage 3 boss. This is an entirely different character that also wears an open vest with a naked chest exposed. I don't know why I thought that this was the same character. As you can imagine, I knew nothing about this story. I didn't even know that this was a different character, but trust me on this. I'm gonna put footage here. As you can see in this comparison picture, you can probably see why I thought this was the same boss, and they even fight similar. They're like bare-fisted, and each attack they like combo and can kill you in like 4 hits. It's not the same boss. Part 2 is a platforming challenge, and unless you play this game for yourself, you won't understand why this is so annoying. I'm gonna leave in all of my fails here because it humanizes me. Not an amazing player, just an average guy. And I think this is what you can expect if you decide to play this game. We already established that this game uses tank controls, so keep in mind, this is harder than it looks. Because these platforms spiral upwards, you need to reorient yourself after every jump. And remember, you can't walk backwards. This becomes a problem with the side dash. If you double tap, you'll fling yourself off the platform. Every platform is extremely small, so sidestepping at any point sends you straight down, take damage, you gotta restart from the bottom. If that weren't bad enough, you've got a boss throwing projectiles at you the entire time. It's like a little mosquito that you cannot swat. He keeps circling you. And once you reach the top, you fight another boss. You're taken to the character select screen, but you have to use Vic. He retains any damage he took during the first boss. Because that boss hits like a freight train, I was practically on my deathbed. So take a look. This boss flies around and fires projectiles, and the arena is tiny, so dodging is tough. I'm trying all sorts of things. If you break every crystal, you become invincible for a few seconds. If you cast a level 3 magic spell, you can create a temporary shield that blocks his fireballs. I spam the shield to try to lock him down, but he breaks out almost immediately. And all the while, there's a red circle on the ground to taunt you. That's an attack buff when you're using Vic. Why couldn't it be blue? Eventually, I concede and decide, you know what? I'm just gonna restart this entire stage. For the first time this entire playthrough, I picked the right option on the death screen. That takes you to the character select before this boss. It doesn't restart the stage. So I start thinking, well, if I can redistribute my stats, I'm gonna pump everything into magic and see what other spells I have, since I haven't experimented with magic much. After testing a few spells, I found that if you hold circle, tap X, then tap circle 8 times, you cast a spell that heals you to full. So magic has been insanely broken this entire time, and I never knew. As soon as I cast a spell, I take him down, no problem. It's over. Some story stuff happens, and by some, I mean this game has close to 2 hours of cutscenes, which is about a quarter of its runtime. And despite that, all I can say is that stuff happens. What kind of stuff? The Japanese kind of stuff. Dude turns into a chick who is probably a god, and the ninja girl falls on her knees and cries for the villain. Stage 9 is just one boss fight, but it's a pretty annoying one. This game's idea of difficulty is to make the boss fly in an unreachable spot. The reason this is annoying is because aerial combat isn't very good in this game. You don't have aerial combos, and it takes some practice to stagger your attack after you jump. If you attack too soon after jumping, you get a plunge, and this stage has bottomless pits, so you don't want to do that. So just like the stage 6 boss, you can take advantage of the AI when it gets stuck and just spam ranged attacks. I haven't mentioned this until now, but these humanoid bosses can trap you in a shield, just like the one I've been using the entire game. When you're trapped, you have to mash every button to break free. The shield doesn't hurt you, and I think you actually deflect projectiles while you're trapped, so it's just an annoyance. You're trying to attack the boss, they cast a shield on you, and depending on their mood, they can spam it. It's just a pain in the ass, it's annoying. So I've been sitting on something like 50 pieces of materia. I haven't used it the entire game. And I eventually grew tired from trying to land jump attacks, so I started using the materia to pull off special moves. While you're channeling a special attack or magic, you're completely impervious to damage, but the animation to complete the attack is very slow. So slow that the enemy will usually move away before you can fire it off because the tracking is very weak. The hitbox is also very short on some of these, so I really wasn't missing much by ignoring the special attacks until now, but as we'll see in the final stage, I completely blow through my supply of materia to just lock down these final bosses with these special attacks, completely trivializing the final stage. So we're going to cover that right now. For the finale, the bad guys create the Pentagon in Japan. I guess that was the point of the game. They needed to kill off most of the population to make this happen somehow. We've got another 3-part stage. For the first part, you've got to play as someone other than Vic Romano. I picked the chick because she doesn't have any crippling weakness like some of the other guys. She's like a diet version of the main character. It's a simple stage, not much to it, very linear. Honestly, this could have been the first stage of the game and I wouldn't have questioned it. Then you get a rematch against that awful stage 6 boss. The secret agent chick fused with it at some point. Either it was off screen or I blinked and missed it. This time we're on solid ground, and I have an entire game's worth of materia saved up, so I spam special attacks, and it was over. Completely unintentional, but this boss is the one that fires those gravity spheres that rapidly sap your health. It just so happens that this girl's level 2 special is the same attack. For the next part, you play as Vic, but all of his stats are at their baseline. You can't raise any of them. So I kept spamming specials again, and that completely dealt with phase 1. For the final part, everyone prays with the power of friendship or something to buff the hero. It's the same story you've seen a million times. Now you've got max stats and you can easily kill the final boss. He floats, but unlike his girlfriend, his Achilles heel is he touches the ground. If a boss is on the ground, it's easy. Just lock him down with your 5 shield charges and mash attack. If you ever are in danger of dying, full health heal, you can do it twice because you have 16 talismans here. Total joke. Totally anticlimactic final boss. And the ending feels unfinished. I don't think it'd be satisfied with it if I invented the Japanese language and understood every stroke of every letter. When you kill the villain, both he and the sword disappear, and the island you're standing on crumbles into dust. It looks like it's snowing. Your party members, they look up for a few seconds, they go, oh, he's dead. They walk away. They don't really care. Your girlfriend almost does the same, but then she turns around and waves. So clearly the main character survived, but that's it. That's the game. The credits start rolling, and no, there's no post-credits scene. There's no closure aside from knowing the bad guys lost and the heroes won. But did the bad guys really lose? Because as far as I can tell, there's probably about 5% of Japan remaining. Everyone has died. There's no usable land left. I think they accomplished their goal. This country's fucked. In fact, most of Disc 3 feels unfinished. There's barely any exploration, just boss after boss, and then it ends. If you save your game and load up Disc 1, you jump straight into New Game Plus. The difficulty is not raised at all. On the contrary, you have maximum stats, and they give you 99 materia, so it's even easier on the repeat run. There's no cutscenes, those are all automatically removed. You do get a new character here, but he can't attack while standing, only while dashing. And he's always dashing, he can't walk. So fighting enemies and breaking crystals is pretty tricky. Maybe you can use him as a sort of challenge mode. Sadly, Soukaigi doesn't end on a high note. In fact, if I had to rank the discs, Disc 1 is easily the best, and then it slowly dips from there. Not to say it ever gets bad, but even with its short runtime, it runs out of steam hours before it's over. I really didn't know what to expect from Soukaigi. No one talks about this game. It's one of those more obscure Squaresoft published titles, and the handful of reviews that do exist don't praise it. In fact, it seems like a lot of people hate this game. I had a fun time, but the cracks started to show in the back half. The platforming and the boss fights, they're not that great. But figuring out how the mechanics work as I played was an experience that games used to offer in spades, and it's something that I've missed. That made the playthrough worthwhile. It's impossible to get that kind of experience from any modern big budget game, and it's extremely difficult to find in any of the well-known indie games. I don't think the issue is that players don't appreciate figuring things out for themselves. Players like puzzle games. They like figuring out mysteries. It's more that game devs don't trust players these days. You don't even have an option to disable yellow paint or tutorials in a lot of these. You want to talk accessibility? It should go both ways. Let me turn off these features. Accessibility is not about making a game for everyone. If that were the case, these features would be modular. Players that don't want these features are part of everyone too, after all. Accessibility at its core is a symptom of a much larger issue. Games are designed nowadays as one-off experiences. Players just want to beat a game and move on. They want it for the story. They don't really want to savor the game and play through it again and again. You can tell me I'm wrong, but I've seen people say as much in the comments of my own videos. To eliminate any resistance, developers create features to make beating games as straightforward as possible. And it's sad to see development cycles mutate into something wildly unsustainable. 5+ years to make a single game. How can you spend hundreds of millions of dollars and half a decade making something that players don't want to replay? But these are the sorts of games that the market craves. I'm not in a position to tell anyone they're wrong for liking the state of this industry. But if I were happy with modern gaming, do you think I would be playing a JRPG from the 90s that nobody ever played, not even in Japan? But I don't think this industry even knows what a game is anymore. What is a game? An activity where there has to be a winner and a loser. Skill may or may not be involved, but on the most basic level, at its core, there should exist a failure state. Even something like golf. If you're the only person in the world playing golf, is it still a game? Who's winning or losing? In that case, you're playing against yourself. You're playing for score to beat your personal best. There still exists a failure state. If you can't lose, is it a game? Developers are toying with what it means to be a game. Sony patented a feature where an AI ghost will show you how to play a game if you're ever stuck. When are we gonna question what the point of all of this is if you can't win or lose? Why are you even playing a game at that point? If someone is struggling, instead of asking that player to learn from his mistakes, developers design mechanics or features to ease the burden. To me, the entire point of a video game is learning from mistakes. If you're coasting along the entire time without much challenge, if any, and if you hardly ever die, why not just watch a movie? I'm not asking for a brutal challenge. Soukaigi is easy, but learning how to make it easy, that was fun. If there was zero adjustment period, it's just a mediocre action RPG where a third of the experience is spent watching cutscenes. We've progressed to the point where developers are so fearful of players struggling that they want to prevent that struggle from ever occurring, hence accessibility features and extreme guidance or streamlining. Why should I be playing an untranslated JRPG to recapture the magic of learning how to play a game without any help? Let me struggle. Let me get lost. Let me explore. Is it exploring if you slap a glowing marker on my map telling me where I need to be at all times? When I say old games were better, it's not to be a hipster or to act like an old man. It's not for the sake of appearing a certain way. When I'm done making a YouTube video, I don't secretly play newer games. I'm replaying the same old stuff I played to death. Or I'm looking for stuff I missed out on that catches my particular interest, usually JRPGs. I'd scroll through a list of Squaresoft games from their golden era, see a title I've never seen before, Soukaigi. The hell is that? And I go from there. The devs of this game went on to make like 60-something wrestling games afterwards, but they still squeeze in time for a small budget side project now and then. Most recently something called Full Metal Schoolgirl. I think it's pretty sad that devs need to spend years making the same game over and again, because that's what's popular and sells, but that's not love. I saw the same thing with Platinum Games. You think they want to make live service junk? It's enough to make extremely skilled developers quit. But the CEO is making these decisions to make the company survive. I doubt anyone at Yuke's loves making 10 WWE games back to back. They probably love working on these more niche projects. But they don't sell, and they've got to go back to churning the same drivel for another long stretch. Taking risks with niche titles, it's not just risky today, it's always been risky. You can't make whatever you want and expect to turn a profit. These are businesses. You need to be business savvy, and business and art don't mix. Soukaigi wasn't developed by Square, but it was funded by them. It couldn't exist without Square's money. I doubt they expected stellar sales here. They didn't even bother to localize it. At the time, nobody in the West cared about Japanese folklore or history. But Square let them make the game anyway. They gave them the budget to voice every cutscene. It's unheard of at the time. Even in the PS2, most cutscenes weren't voiced. So Square took a chance on a visionary, hoping it'd pay off. I give Square so much shit. I know plenty of people do these days, but I don't hate the company, not at all. Yeah, they've drifted away from their glory days, but they're still publishing niche titles from lesser known studios, trying to give them a chance to succeed. Stuff like The Diofield Chronicle or Harvestella. Even among known series like Saga, Square is still letting the series creator make his newer entries as newcomer unfriendly as he likes, just to please long-standing fans. Look at Emerald Beyond, made solely for fans, and the sales prove as much. It didn't sell squat. Later this year, they're gonna release The Adventures of Elliot. I hate that fucking title, but it's an isometric action RPG, and how often do we get those nowadays? So my point is, the fact that Square is still taking chances, I admire that. The only reason we held Square in such high esteem during the 90s is because they did the same thing. They had the courage to give these smaller teams a chance. So playing through this game kind of gave me like a pre-midlife crisis here, because it had me questioning, what have I been doing the past 10 years playing video games? All of these experiences, and I hate to use the word experience because, you know, a game is a game. To me, it's not an experience. But these developers, they try to sell you on these keywords like immersion, experience. They want games to be something more than what they really are, which is, for me, just something that I play for fun. Something that passes the time. You know, playing games was never something that I did as a career. It was never something that I viewed as high art. This is an important facet of society. We need to preserve this and enhance it and make it better throughout the generations. Like, when I played games on the Super Nintendo, I played Mario, or I played like Mortal Kombat with my brother. To me, games were just something to pass the time. And I play games now not for the experience. I play them because, specifically if I play something like a strategy game, it's because I want to strategize. If I play a JRPG, I want to customize the characters. I want to play around with different builds. If I play a story game, which I don't do often, I want to play it for the story. But it seems like story has infested almost every genre, and it has become the de facto metric that we use to judge a game's worth. Like, if the story isn't worthwhile, then who really cares? And that's unfortunate, because story is like at the bottom threshold of the totem pole of facets of game design that I care about. I don't really care about story. To me, it's not something that I can sink my nails into and get a nice strong grasp on and be like, and hold it up, right, rise it into the sky and be like, story, look at this beautiful gem of a story. It's sticking with me for months. That's all I can think about is this story. It never happened. And that's not me trying to say all games should be catered to make me happy. You know, games should have no story. That's not the point. But somewhere along the line, we've gone to design games so that players can experience that story. They want to ensure that every player can see a story through to the end. And that has taken precedence over the gameplay experience. It's no longer about let's have players explore, solve puzzles, problem solve, use critical thinking skills to try to figure out their way to make it to the goal. The goal is irrelevant at this point. It's like you're sitting on a tram ride and they're slowly driving you towards the destination so you can look at the scenery along the way. To me, that's not a rewarding experience. And that's kind of why I've grown so distant from modern games, is because so many of them are taking that approach. They're trying to structure their games so that everyone can see the story through to the end. And just for me, like, I don't care about that experience. And if you have to forsake the explorative aspect of a game, that part where you're experimenting and trying to figure out what does or doesn't work, to make sure that everybody can see the experience through to the end, then that's not a worthwhile use of my time. What devs have done to try to combat this problem to make players like me happy is they include difficulty sliders or different kind of modes to give that challenge back. They try to reintroduce the challenge, but you've stripped it out of the core design principle of the game, because now the game is balanced around like a normal mode, and it has a story that players try to reach to the end. And this is what the overwhelming majority of players, and especially reviewers, are going to use to judge a game. And because of that, it's like every game, it's like, well, you don't like this experience, just play it on the harder mode. Like, you don't like BioShock on normal mode, play it on the hardest mode. Now ammo is scarce. But that's kind of one of those things where if I look at a game and it's like the normal mode really isn't worthwhile, it doesn't have anything of substance, I have to judge it by the harder difficulty. Developers know that most players don't play games on the harder difficulty, so what they do is they balance it around normal mode, and then hard mode is just slider tweaks, like the enemies deal more damage or you have less health. It doesn't change the game at a structural level. They don't try to reintroduce the challenge in more meaningful ways, such as having more complexity. They don't hide extra mechanics behind the harder difficulties. To me, it's not a meaningful change. A meaningful change would be something like in Valkyrie Profile on the PlayStation 1, where the different difficulty modes change the number of dungeons and the characters that you can recruit. In the hard mode, the game is lengthier because there are more dungeons. On easy mode, there's less dungeons, and in a kind of ironic twist of fate, that makes the game more difficult because there's less opportunities to gather loot, there's less characters to recruit, there's less experience that you can get from the dungeons. That's an interesting way to incorporate different difficulty modes, but most games don't do that, because if all you're going to do is make a game that's primarily a story-driven experience that players play for the story, you're not going to expect those players to replay the game. And so why put in all that effort into making each different difficulty mode more diverse and interesting? That's why we don't see that frequently. None of this really applies to Soukaigi because it is also a story-driven experience, and it doesn't have different difficulty modes. All it has is the baseline one, and once you beat it, hop into New Game Plus and kind of do the same thing again, but it's even easier. So I'm not trying to say Soukaigi is my ideal version of a game, and it's kind of irrelevant to the discussion that this has mutated to towards the end of this video. It's completely unrelated to what I originally sought to make with this project, but there's really no other way to explain this other than to say I don't think it should be a given for every player to play a game to beat a game. I think that victory should be earned, and that doesn't necessarily mean I think you should have a brutal, unforgiving, ball-busting experience. I don't want you to be like, I don't want to clench my teeth in frustration the whole time, but even something simple like Mario 64. Mario 64 is a game intended for children to beat it. Everyone, when they were a kid in the 90s that had a Nintendo 64, they played Mario 64 and they beat it. And they had a great time. And it's a struggle to beat it because of the camera issues, and because you'll come into stages where there are bottomless pits, and one mistake is punishing enough to kill you. It's not like, oh, we're gonna lift you up and put you back on the platform, try again. But because we've become so accustomed to that type of game design, that in turn drives that story-driven experience where, okay, we don't have the challenge of the gameplay anymore. What's the point of this game? Well, you gotta see it through for the story. So, and because that is what has caused video games to explode in popularity, like, if it wasn't for these cinematic movie-style games that have since become adapted into movies and TV shows themselves, it's very bizarre for me, because when I was a teenager and a kid, and I told people I like games, like nerd, loser, who plays games? Now those people are playing games, but they're not playing games for the same reason that I play them. I play games for the depth of the mechanics, and to be challenged, and to have a different experience with each title. I don't play games because there's a certain voice actor in it. I don't play games because it's a certain IP like Marvel or Star Wars. I don't play games because I'm interested in the story. I play games because I want to play a game. I value that interactive element. If I'm putting a controller between my hands, I want to use it. I don't want to set it down and watch movies. And even something like Soukaigi, this game has severe pacing issues because it bookends each chapter with 5 minutes worth of cutscenes. And you figure that's like 10 chapters, 10 minutes of cutscenes each chapter. You're looking at nearly 2 hours worth of nothing. And that becomes a very frustrating experience when I'm really having a great time with the gameplay, and there's this disparity where even if I was interested in the story, I'm sitting in these cutscenes for so long, I kind of itch to just get back into the gameplay, because I look at the controller in my hand, I'm like, what am I doing here? It's very difficult to resist the urge to skip cutscenes, And that's something that I frequently do with a lot of games, is I just don't care anymore about the story. I'll skip the cutscenes, get straight to the gameplay. And if the gameplay starts to bore me, then I know that the story wouldn't really help anyhow, because on the gameplay side of things, you're kind of suffering through the gameplay to get to the story. And that is, once I start to think that, like, why am I playing this game? I'm not really enjoying the combat, not really enjoying the mechanics here. What am I playing it for? Oh, I'm playing it for the story. Once I think that, I'm out. I checked out, retired. I'm out of there.
Bored now.
And I just move on to something that I've played a dozen times, because it's already a guaranteed bet of what kind of experience I'm going to get out of it. I know it's not going to be, okay, I gotta wait to suffer through this gameplay to get to the story. Or vice versa, suffer through the story to get to the gameplay. There are a few games that I've played where I've enjoyed the balance of both the story and the gameplay. So something like Final Fantasy X. And even then, I only enjoy Final Fantasy X story because of the English dub. I love the cheesy English dub. To me, that's an iconic part of the experience. You take that away, it's half the game.
I heard you were quite the crybaby.
Yeah, maybe when I was a kid. Maybe even a little now. Just a little.
Kind of a little behind the scenes nugget here, but the worst part of making YouTube videos, it's not the recording process. It's not trying to think of what I want to make a video about. It's not even really the editing. The editing is a chore because, like, in my mind, I already said everything that needs to be said, but now I need to spice it up to make it look like an interesting YouTube video so people would be interested in watching it. To me, the worst part of making a YouTube video is playing games to capture footage. It's like the most absurd thing that I can think of, where why I want to make YouTube videos where I talk about video games, but I don't want to play the video games. But I do it because, to me, that justifies something like this part of the video where I can talk about why I'm so disappointed with video games. And it's not even a modern thing. It's just when you've played enough video games, and I hate to say that playing video games is like a meter that you fill, and once you've hit the end, you're like, enough, I'm satiated. But I've really reached like maximum levels of saturation with video games where I don't really have much interest in looking for new experiences, because number one, they're pretty much just the last 10 minutes worth of stuff that I've talked about, movies and having excessive hand-holding. But number two, when I look at a new video game, I want to play a new video game. And it's so difficult to find a new experience these days because a lot of these developers, they're not really taking inspiration from life events. They're not really taking inspiration from dreams, from the world. They're taking inspiration from media that they've already consumed. How many games have you seen on Steam? And I'm gonna single out indie games here because that's been something that a lot of people have been praising lately as an alternative to mainstream big budget titles. Like, the indie scene is thriving. Look at the indie scene. I'm gonna speak in broad generalizations here, but it doesn't apply, of course, to every indie game. But most indie games, they look like derivative titles because the developers, they'll freely admit they were inspired by the games that they grew up with or that they enjoy playing. Like, that's what gave rise to terms like roguelites or Metroidvania or Souls-like. Anytime I see a game described with those monikers, I look at it and I go, I'm not interested. Because what you're doing is you're taking something that's already well established and you're going, what if I twist one or two aspects of it? To me, that's just a remixed experience. That's not something that's new. You can give me a new story, and then of course the people are like, well, I'm in it for the story. It's very easy to just say, I'm going to tell a new story. But are you giving me a fresh gameplay experience? How many video games am I going to play where it's a giant map comprised of blocks, there's save points, I got to fight a boss, I got to get a power up, and that allows me to open up a door or reach access to an area that I skipped, I got to backtrack to get to it. How many times am I going to do that before it gets stale? It already got stale within the Metroid and Castlevania series, and now we have all these indie games. I'm inspired by Symphony of the Night. Here's my take on it. What's your take on Symphony of the Night? It's the same game, hack and slash, you fight monsters, but this time I'm telling a story about, little bug men or little ghost, or it has anime girls. That's not interesting to me. If your only twist is I have this kind of story, or I'm gonna do Symphony of the Night, but with parrying, so revolutionary. Just every genre. Have we done parrying in puzzle games yet? No? Let's put parrying in a puzzle game. That's not interesting to me. I'm not interested in playing something that is just gonna be rote or formulaic. I want something that feels new, and something that I think indie devs have caught on to this, and now what they're trying to do, the new wave of indie games, they're trying to blend genres together. What if we have shooting and hack and slash mixed together? What if we have shooting, side-scrolling, and also something like Space Harrier? We try to blend these genres together. To me, that doesn't feel like a new experience. That just feels like you've duct taped two disparate identities and you're trying to present it as something new. It's not. It's a Frankenstein amalgamation. I see it for what it is. And you can try to sugarcoat it all you want, and you can try to dress it up and put makeup on it and make it look like it's something different, present it as something innovative. It's not. And you just need to play the game for a few minutes to know this. And I don't think it's because I've seen this excuse a lot of times, even among movies or music, where everything is a derivative experience these days. You can't make anything new. Everything new has already been done before. I don't think that's true at all. I just think that if your inspiration is from something that's pre-existing media, then of course you're going to fall into that trap where everything is derivative. But if you have experiences in life that don't rely on a digital interface, I think that gives you a better opportunity to be a more creative creator, a better artist. It's not really art if you're just taking someone else's art, like a picture of an anime girl, and you put a hat on them and you go, look, anime hat girl. And everyone's gonna go, amazing, look at this anime hat girl. That's not an interesting experience to me. But if you, like, for example, James Cameron came up with the idea for Terminator from an image that he had in a dream. He saw a robot standing in flames, and he's like, that's a movie. It wasn't that he watched some science fiction flick from the 60s, and he's like, what if I did that same science fiction flick, but with a robot instead of a normal man? That's what I'm trying to get at here, where you can have new ideas, but if all you do is rely on playing games or watching movies to come up with those ideas, then I don't think you're really going to make the kind of experience that I'm looking for. And experience aside, I don't think you're going to make something that I'll find interesting or fun. And with Soukaigi, this is fairly simple as an action RPG. It doesn't try to impress with its gameplay, it tries to impress with its presentation. You've got fully 3D environments, it's completely voiced, you got a ton of cutscenes, and a wonderful soundtrack performed by live musicians. It's just too bad the story went completely over my head. But still, this is a no-nonsense game with zero fluff, so it's right up my alley. This is what I'm looking for in an RPG. You've got no side quests, there's no NPCs to chat up, no hub to wander, towns to visit, equipment to manage, none of that. You take the concept of an RPG, and you distill it so pure that it basically becomes an arcade game. And you get Soukaigi. It's extremely rough around the edges, but that roughness is also part of its charm. If it controlled well, I don't know if I have enough material here to make a video about the game, so I'm grateful that it's got its quirks. Is it a hidden gem? It's hidden, but I really wouldn't call it a gem. More like a $10 bill you found in the pocket of an old pair of jeans. Would I replay it? Yeah, I think I would. Try out some of the other characters, skip every cutscene, beat it in like 2 hours. But not on New Game Plus, on a fresh save. Giving me max stats takes the fun out of it. If this looks like something you'd be interested in, give it a shot. Don't let the language barrier intimidate you. Trust me, I'm not good at games. I don't know any Japanese. I don't even watch anime. And I beat this with minimal issue. Sometimes, you've got to step out of your comfort zone so you can play something that'll never be made again. It pays to be brave and try new things. I promise, everyone at Square will sleep soundly knowing you acquired Soukaigi on the high seas. Nobody still working at the company even knows of this game's existence. And we don't need everything to be ported or remade either. Do you want to pay for this game? Isn't it better that it's long forgotten and without a port? You can play it for free without anyone giving the slightest care. I like to appreciate these games for what they are, not for what they could be. With Soukaigi, it's a weird little game. It doesn't do anything particularly well outside of the soundtrack, but boy can I feel the passion, and that counts for a lot. And I think any sort of port or remake would streamline the controls, completely change the level design, and ruin the appeal of this game. Yeah, the controls suck, but you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. And if you live your life waiting for ports or fan translations, or just waiting in general, waiting for someone to come along and help you out, maybe that day will come, and maybe that wait will be worth it. For me, I'm not getting younger, and I can't wait forever. I'm not the patient type. So I took a chance on something I've never done before, and you know what? It was worth it. That might not be the same experience for you or anyone else. Maybe taking that chance won't pay off. I've taken chances on things in the past, not just games, and have been let down. That chance for failure, it's a natural part of life. But that also makes the victories all the sweeter.